College Red Goggins, Music Optimistic here, and today I'm going to be counting on my top 40 best albums and EPs of 2024. Now, 2024 has easily been the best year for music of the 2020s yet, maybe even of the past 10 years in all, excluding like 2015 and 2016, in 2019. Okay, so yeah, maybe just this decade. And so, unlike every other year and list that I've done, where it's been a top 15, this year, I decided I gotta do a top 40. I gotta make sure that every album that I love this year gets a shout out, because honestly, if I just limited it to top 15, we'd be cutting out even some 9 out of 10s that landed at like number 19 or so. Yeah, number 18 and up, or at least 9 out of 10. So if I were to just do a top 15, we'd be missing out on albums that I fucking loved this year. Now, unlike the worst list, I'm not going to be talking in depth about every single album, or we would be here all day. So I'll give little blurbs as we go through it and get more in depth as we get to the top of the list. Number 40, Chat Pile with Cool World. For a sludge metal and noise rock project, this thing is surprisingly catchy and really, really easy to follow along with, and honestly kind of accessible. Number 39, Uboa, Impossible Light. Uboa returns with the horror that permeated her last project, but even more holistic in my opinion, whereas that one could be a bit more aggressive and just in your face. This one is a lot more, not a lot more subtle, but just a little bit more abstract. Number 38, Blood Incantation, Absolute Elsewhere. This thing is pretty much just one very long song divided up among 6 tracks of these very forward-thinking death metal tracks that have even some electronic elements with the Tangerine Dream feature. The lyrics are all presented in a very sci-fi oriented fashion. This is kind of like the nerd album of the year, because if you're into sci-fi bullshit, you're gonna like this. And I'm not really into sci-fi bullshit, but I really did enjoy this. Number 37, Sam LRC with A Lonely Sinner. This was the most popular record made by a user on the Album of the Year site, as we had a lot of good Album of the Year projects come through this year, and with that site becoming more of an outlet for artists to push their own stuff and communicate with other artists, collab, get stuff going through. But it is definitely the most popular and clicked with a lot of people for a good reason, and that's because it's just a damn good post-metal album. Number 36, Beth Gibbons, Lives Outgrow. This is definitely one of the more meditative and cerebral listening experiences you'll have all year, with it being a lot more folk and singer-songwritery than anything else here, but it honestly is pretty fucking passionate and heart-wrenching for anyone who comes across it. Number 35, Kamasi Washington with Fearless Movement. The sessions cut to this record are absolutely immaculate, but I'd be lying a little if I said it's a record I come back to all that often. I mean, it is an hour and a half, but I mean, the record is good while it's on. It's just not one I return to a whole lot. Number 34, Nilüfer Yanya. I don't know. Nilüfer Yanya, My Method Actor. This was one of the later additions to the list because I was kind of unsure how I'd feel about it, knowing almost nothing about the artist or whatever this thing would sound like going into it. But it really did turn out to be one of the best indie rock, pop rock, like softer records of the year. It was just really captivating, really emotional, and honestly, I think if you're a fan of pop or indie rock at all, you should definitely check it out. Number 33, Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft. Billie continues her winning streak on this, honing her sound down to this more subtle and hazy atmosphere, having more somber ballads like Chihiro, Birds of a Feather, The Greatest, and even some of the more straightforward tracks like Lunch and L'amour de ma vie are still some of the more subtler bangers that she's done today, because the latter does end with an amazing house beat, but it still makes in a certain way that is a lot more experimental and not as easy on the ears compared to maybe some of the other stuff she would have done in the past. So on this record, she's kind of doing what she always does best, but just in a more subtle and in a less surface level way. Number 32, Denzel Curry, King of the Mischievous South, Volume 2. Denzel Curry hits again with yet another record where he's going on a different style of hip-hop. This one doing like some sort of old 90s Memphis era hip-hop a la 3 6 Mafia. And yeah, he pretty much kills it on this record. The features all do a great job. The sequencing is great. I love the little interludes with DJ Skinny Pimp or Skinny Pimp? What was his name? Kingpin Skinny Pimp, where he essentially acts as this curator and talks about how things are heating up or easing you from one moment to the next. I don't love the reissue of this and the whole situation with that, where it was like, this is the real album, and it added on like a few tracks that pretty much just reiterated what other tracks were already doing. But I mean, this core version is still pretty solid, and if you like those bonus tracks, that's fine too. Number 31, this Hoplites record. This thing dropped really early in the year, was really one of the big breakout Bandcamp artists of the year, and it's for good reason. The riffs on here are pretty fucking incredible. The way that he fuses black metal with sort of clarinet style stuff, I think it's clarinet. It's very interesting, and it's very, very enthralling. And there's even a point near the middle of this record where the chaos stops, and you just get these breakdowns into like pure silence, and then build back up into utter chaos again. It's really a jarring and reflective moment because it pulls you away from the experience. You're like, hell yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah. And then you just get this hard cut into nothing. And then it just feels like it's breaking the mold of what black metal can be. And it's just a very, very, very forward-thinking record, and I cannot wait to see what they do next. Number 30, Tracy Breaks My Twee Monsters. This thing dropped at the end of October, and I pretty much checked it out because of a record that you'll see pretty far high up in the list. They were a pretty big collaborator on that. They had one key collaboration. I don't know why I'm saying big. And so I was like, yeah, let me see if they create pretty good stuff. And it turns out even Violet Pony's collaborators can make pretty fucking great high-level art, because this is some damn good hyperpop, some damn good deconstructed bass, deconstructed club, and it's just, wow. Wow. Number 29, Floating Points with Cascade. I'd always meant to check out a Floating Points record, seeing the acclaim for that Floating Points and Pharoah Sanders and London Point Symphony, I think it is, the Promises record. I always wanted to check out a Floating Points record because I saw the acclaim for that, and I was like, that seems like a very odd list of collaborators, considering Floating Points is like a house electronic artist, and Pharoah Sanders is like an ambient guy, and then the symphony. So I was like, sure, let me check out this Floating Points record, and oh my god, yeah, his take on tech house is pretty damn enthralling. There are some points where I feel like it goes on a little too long, like some points could have been trimmed up a little, but it's just pretty damn good while it's on. It's going to have you doing some pretty advanced calculus in your head. Number 28, 21 Pilots, Clancy. Earlier in the year, I did a Discog rank for 21 Pilots, and if you saw that, you saw that this record was fairly high on the list, and that's because I do think not only is it one of 21 Pilots' best records, it's one of the best pop records and just albums of this year, period. It's definitely one of the ones that I was like, I had to expand the list because this was one of my most played records of the year, and if I didn't expand the list to include this, I would feel like you're not getting an accurate picture of what I listened to in the year. Yeah, if I didn't include this record, it would feel dishonest and disingenuous because this album pretty much was one of my big listening points of the year, and that's for good reason. It's just some damn good pop music. I do think there are a couple moments where it lulls, like Lavish, but it's not. It's pretty much it's mostly great. Number 27, another record to come out of the album of the year field. That would be Trash Snacks with Meet Me on Mars. Despite me collaborating on their first project, A Review Retention, I wasn't all too crazy about it. I thought it was okay, but it definitely had some kinks that could have been worked out on a future release. And I think on this follow-up, they definitely worked out a lot of those kinks and even went in a more ambient slash indie shoegaze focus. Shoegaze is definitely not the right word, but you know what I mean. Just a lot more contemplative, meditative, not as in-your-face type of songwriting. And the biggest example of that is on the penultimate track, Forest Song, which easily best song of the record. It is such a long yet well thought out, paced, and written masterpiece that you just have to listen to and experience for yourself to understand what I'm talking about when I say that it takes you through this entire experience and pretty much, literally, I'm trying to put it into words and I can't. But don't let that song overshadow the ambition of this record, because Trash Next is going for a good amount of stuff here, and I feel like he does pretty much hit the mark. I'm just pretty excited to see what he'll do next. Number 26, Laura Marling, Patterns in Repeat. To put it in a word, beautiful. That's pretty much how I can sum up this record. It feels very intimate, as if the act of listening to this by itself is me listening in on some sort of conversation with their child, or like some sort of lullaby that she's singing to her child, as that's noted on a few tracks here. Because this is a record very much reflecting on the place that she is in her life currently, and the actions and circumstances that brought her to this point. And listening into it is very heartwarming, beautiful. She just loves her life, and she wants to tell you everything that she has done, and she wants the best for her children and her lover, and it's just a record that kind of brings tears to your eyes. It is stunning, beautiful, and also very subtle. Don't go into this expecting to get some bops or bangers. It's very much a folk, chamber folk record, and its beauty is absolutely marvelous. Number 25, Ace of Thorns, The View From. This was the last record that I added to the list. In fact, this thing just dropped 5 days ago.
It is currently 4:50 a.m. New Year's Eve. It's been a bit longer than 4 days. Sorry, I got depressed and couldn't edit.
But I knew pretty much upon first listen that this would make the list and replace their other record, Euphoria, which was on the list prior. And it's here not because it is significantly better than those records, because I think it's only about marginally better than Euphoria, but it's here instead of that one, because this is a lot more ambitious and a lot more personal, depicting them at their lowest, going through different suicidal ideations and the downfall one person's mental health can take throughout a singular night. While I do have production issues with this record being produced in BandLab and being fairly quiet, especially for the noise rock and post-grunge it's going for, tracks like Ghosting are absolutely haunting and absolutely touching songs that just move you almost to tears with their refrains of "I'm so sorry, I'll be ghosting you for the rest of your life." Very heartbreaking stuff, and not heartbreaking at all. Number 24, Lovesick Puppy, Carousel from Hell. I'd be lying if I said I knew who the hell Lovesick Puppy was before Fantano gave them a very positive review, but after that manic review that he put out, I had to listen to this, and wow. Oh boy, this thing is incredible. Like, if you're very much into like Machine Girl or Death Grips, this will be very much up your alley. It's just very high octane, industrial hip hop, breakbeats, digital hardcore, the screams on American Healthcare during the ba 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 ba. Those just absolutely shoot through my fucking skull and just. I'm not a big fan of X's. I feel like the mix on that is kind of shit. But I mean, the rest of this record is pretty fucking phenomenal and surprisingly catchy for just how in your face and loud it is. Number 23, Mannequin Pussy, I Got Heaven. This is a record I kind of overrated earlier in the year. On my Instagram story, I gave it like a decent 9. And while I still do like it, it's fairly high on the list. I definitely, its novelty of switching back and forth from its hardcore punkier tracks to its more soft indie rock balladry has definitely worn off on me a little bit, especially with a couple of the tracks in the back end being not as well structured or well written as the other stuff. A lot of this still is pretty fantastic. Like the intro track, I Got Heaven, Loud Bark, Nothing Like, I Don't Know You, Sometimes. That 5-run intro, that first half, absolutely phenomenal and perfect, and basically one of the best 5-track runs in all of music this year, in my opinion. It just kind of falls apart towards Of Her and Aching, with those being two of the shortest, being almost 2 minutes each, and they definitely could have been structured a bit more, and it had that happen. I feel like I still would love this as much as I did, but I feel like this is definitely a record that you still should check out, hence me putting it this high on the list. Number 22, Ugly, Twice Around the Sun. This is technically an EP, but oh my god, the ambition going into this record, the song structuring, the wheel alone, the intro, the intro alone deserves it to be on this list, because The Wheel is a song that is so good that it's like, if this was an album and everything was structured as well as The Wheel, this would be album of the year, maybe album of the decade. Whenever I hear something like that, all I can think of, it is unfair for you to have 3 catchy ass sections to your song. I will lay the wheat around you. And then later on the track list, you have I see a windy sky. I know that I haven't got the time. I know that. This record feels like the Beach Boys making a folk record. Like pretty much doing these sunshine pop takes on these old rustic folk like tropes. The structuring of these is absolutely incredible. The playing is incredible. And by the way, the production, it's so warm and lush for what are simply some very by the numbers folk tunes. And the vocals, oh my god, the vocals, especially the vocals on The Wheel. I love that dude singing. Feels like the type of singing that you would hear in like an old record player in like a scary movie, because they want to show, oh, this is very haunting because of the sort of recording fidelity. But then you get it in this high gloss here and it sounds incredible. And I can't wait to see what Ugly does next, because this EP, it's an EP. And this is what they're doing on their miniature project. I can't see what the hell they do on a future full-length album, because this is absolutely incredible. Number 21, JPEG Mafia, I Lay Down My Life For You. While it may not be my favorite Peggy record under the sun, it's definitely one of the more unique and one of the most tight and concise, because this thing is only like 14 tracks long, like 40 minutes, and pretty much it all focuses on this one sound, this kind of punk industrial metal fusion of hip-hop. You have the intro, I scream this in the mirror before I interact with anyone, where it literally feels like he's a punk frontman. And then with the breakdown of the second half with the dubstep snare, absolutely fucking wild. The chugging guitars on this record are absolutely phenomenal, and I hope Peggy keeps going in this direction, because honestly, he does a damn good job at it. And if he hones this further on a future release, I feel like we would be looking at the best Peggy record, because like I said, I don't think it's perfect. I don't think it's flawless. I'm not a big fan of Vulgar Display of Power. I feel like it's a bit too background and interlude and filler track for me. And then the track on here with Denzel Curry, JPEG Ultra, feels like a weird transitional moment, because it just hard cuts from the industrial metal of Jihad Joe and ex-military into this weird jazz rap with Denzel. It doesn't make any sense in the track list. Maybe if it was on Curry's last record, I would have liked it more, but I just don't in here, because it feels like such a jarring out of nowhere move and it doesn't work. But other than that, I think this is pretty damn phenomenal. I'm definitely looking forward to the next one from Peggy, even if it will probably take a couple years, because his release schedule is really weird. Number 20, Remy Wolf, Big Ideas. This album here is my Midwest princess. People love Chappell Roan. People love Sabrina Carpenter. But my pop choice of the year, my pop album of the year, aside from a couple later in the list, is this Remy Wolf record, which is so good and so life-affirming that I am going to my first concert ever in March, assuming everything works out. And maybe I'll post a video about that if that happens. The sonic texture on this record is so lush and dense and fuzzy, too. I love the fuzz on this record, on tracks like Wave, and it really helps to assist her rustic, kind of soulful voice through these very catchy pop tunes about breakups, love, being a free-spirited individual. Yeah, this is an album that pretty much also defined my listening experience this year, because Soup, so good. Toro, so good. The choruses on here are so fucking sticky. The vocal performances are so incredible. And the production on this is just absolutely mind-melting and assists the absolutely beautiful. Well, this may not be the best pop record of the year, in my opinion, because I do think Cherries and Cream is kind of a nothing song and kind of just a little middling interlude in the middle. Pretty much every other moment of this goes incredible. Number 19... Glass Beach with Plastic Death. This was another record that dropped really early in the year, and yeah, it's pretty much fucking incredible. Well, I can understand what some people said about the vocals being a bit too whiny or understated for them. I really found this to be very introspective, the playing to be absolutely brilliant, and the mathy riffs to just go absolutely fucking hard above these soaring Radiohead style vocals. And the very conceptual writing around war and killers and like the CIA looking for them and all that was very captivating, and definitely one of the more interesting and thought-provoking records of the year, in my opinion. I do think it kind of drops the ball near the end with Comatose having a weird synth bass breakdown, but I've come around a little on that. I don't hate it as much as I did, but it definitely drops the ball a little bit towards the end conceptually and sonically. But the rest of this record is pretty fucking great and definitely worth your time. Number 18, getting into the 9 out of 10s and above, everything up here, fucking incredible. And you definitely, if you don't check out anything else from this list, definitely check out these. Falling with Scissors, The Death and Birth of an Angel. Metalcore and metal music as a whole just had a really fucking great 2024, having a big resurgence into the mainstream. And this record that came out pretty early, this EP, pretty much fuses metalcore and breakcore and like digital strains of music into this one very tight, very cohesive, conceptual almost little bit of aggression. This thing is only 17 minutes, but it feels like much more than that because it feels so well formed. And the songs on here are so catchy and well written. And while I can't always tell what's being said, what I do pick up from the lyrics is kind of heart-wrenching and very, very entertaining. Just like I said with Ugly, if this is what these guys are doing with a short little EP, I can't wait to see what they do with a full-length record, because this is pretty fucking incredible. And it's just absolutely mind-bendingly good. Number 17, Nails, Every Bridge Burning. I finally came around on Nails this year, because last year, I think it was last year, when I checked out Nails' Unsilent Death, and I got almost nothing from it. But coming back to it this year and going through the rest of their discography in order to prepare myself for this record, I really found a lot to enjoy about those previous projects. Not as much Abandon All Life, because one of my favorite things about Nails is when they do those noise feedback things and then cut into another song. The noise would just cut off and it would just be silence in between the tracks, which kind of soured the album for me. But this album, while it may not be as rough around the edges as previous releases such as Abandon All Life or Unsilent Death, or You Will Never Be One of Us. It is a lot more cleanly produced, and I do think that does result in some of the most pummeling and catchy songs to date. If you are at all interested in metal in 2024, definitely give this one a listen. It may just become off as a Converge ripoff to you, but I found it to be pretty fucking good anyway. Number 16, Quadeca, Scrapyard. What's funny about this record getting a lot of acclaim from people is that this wasn't even supposed to be a big release for Quadeca. This seems to have landed on a couple of year-end lists, and people love the hell out of this. It has an 83 on Album of the Year currently, and this was just supposed to be a little interlude project of leftovers from the last record and tracks that would have made it on Vanisher, which will come eventually. But it turned out to be one of his most key releases, having some of his most well thought out songwriting, his best production yet, and the guests that he brings on here, unlike on From Me to You, really elevate the songs and help bring them to a much higher place than the features did on that aforementioned record. Yeah, if these are the scraps from Vanisher, Vanisher might kill me, or it might just be okay and he's overthinking it. But I guess we'll see when and if that album ever comes out, because I think it was supposed to come out this year, but I think the massive reception to this project kind of made him want to put off that one, because give people time to devour this thing that they're way overhyping, at least in his eyes. Number 15, top 15 time. This is where the album list would have started had I done this like I had any other year. But you know, I'm a changed person. I'm an improved person. Number 15, Igloo Ghost, Title Memory XO. What's funny about having this record so high is there's actually not a lot to say about it, because it's just a pretty damn good deconstructed club drill and bass record that is pretty much best enjoyed as one experience. There's pretty only one song that I would say is really great to listen to on its own, and that's Spano 1 featuring Syst, because it's the one with the most vocals, it's the one with the catchiest refrain, and it's the one where its chaotic nature makes the most sense outside of the context of this entire oceanic chaotic experience. Because really, if you are listening to this record just track by track by track by itself in its own isolated way, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. But if you take it as this one big experience, it really is just going to feel like you're swimming through a giant circuit board, because this thing is just so glitchy, so beautiful, so mathy. It really is just one of those records you got to just put on, pay attention to, because honestly, if you space out a little, you might get a little lost, but also you might still enjoy it, because it is brilliantly produced. And the cover art alone is enough to, you know, get it on the list, but it's good that the album itself sounds good. Number 14, Jack White with No Name. Previously, I had not checked out much of any Jack White stuff, not much of any of the White Stripe stuff. Obviously, I'd heard Seven Nation Army. Who hasn't, if you're in America? I mean, that song has pretty much become a staple for pep band and any sort of sporting event, anything. So if you're in a country where sports are pretty much made the main cultural force, you're gonna hear Seven Nation Army. However, hearing bad trumpet renditions of that didn't exactly compel me to listen to Jack White's own solo stuff, and so I never did. But I checked this one out because everyone seemed to love it, because it's apparently a return to form to blues rock and more noisy garage style stuff. And yeah, it's that. It's really one of the first records that I could categorize as blues rock that I could say I love, because a lot of the stuff that I'd heard in this style beforehand is very much old head, and very much they don't make it like they used to, or at least that's the attitude people talk about when they list about stuff like that, like AC/DC or Led Zeppelin. But going into this, obviously that was a very stupid sentiment to hold, because the choruses on here are just so catchy and the riffs go so fucking hard, and tracks like Bombing Out are pretty much just straight up punk tunes with this very, very foggy, clouded fucking production. Like, the production on here is so rough that it sounds like it's almost being recorded through a carpet, with just how noisy and rough it is, that it could almost be classified as noise rock. And while I wasn't big on the intro Old Scratch Blues the first couple times I heard it, it has grown on me, because it definitely doesn't fit entirely with the straight up rough, punky, angry vibe of the rest of the record, with its more thoughtful and melodic guitar playing. But thematically and sonically, it still does fit. It still does fit, and it's a great intro. Number 13, Gao the Arsonist, and They Mine for Our Bodies. I had been aware of Gao the Arsonist for a while, ever since I reviewed Scuba Diver's Godspeed 2, one of my first videos on this channel to do somewhat well, even if the reaction to it was completely negative, because I shat on Scuba Diver and their stuff. While I still haven't come around on their record, one of the things that stuck with me, and still sticks with me if I ever decide to go back to it, which I don't, is Gao the Arsonist's feature deeper in the track list, because it definitely was one of the more authentic and emotional experiences on the record. And going into their own solo material on here, that pretty much holds true. This album contains some really glitchy, rough around the edges, experimental, industrial hip hop, kind of a horrorcore element to it as well, with these themes of murder, death, extreme violence, and gore being penned to these nightmarish, beautiful instrumentals. And one of the things that I saw in discussion a lot with this record, because this is a record to pop off pretty well for him, is that the production, it's so bad. But really, how is this any worse than Scaring the Hoes? If anything, I think the production of this record is slightly better, with it using these more rough elements to portray this more fucked up, dark, nihilistic, evil vibe. And that's really what this record does best, is just creating this very dark atmosphere, and it just goes and goes and goes. This thing is so weirdly catchy for how rough it is, and if this is his first album in a while, or at least the first one to pop off for him, I can't wait to see what he does next, because I assume he's gonna make a little money from this. And so hopefully the money he uses from this can be put towards production value on the next one, because while I love the production and the rough around the edges mixes and aesthetic on this one, I feel like maybe cleaning up a little on the next one can maybe get a little bit more appeal and more wide acclaim, because this one is a pretty niche record. You might not have heard it, but I think for the most part it is my rap album of the year, or at least it was until a record that we're going to cover in a little bit. Number 12, Godspeed You Black Emperor, no title as of February 13th, 2024, 28,340 dead. This is just some harrowing, ambient post-rock music that reflects the nightmarish hellscape that many have to live and die through Palestine. And it's kind of a nightmare. But I mean, that's kind of the point. With no lyrics, the sound alone and the title is supposed to evoke these sort of nightmarish feelings and hopefully generate some empathy so people in power can do something about this nightmarish situation that has been going on for nearly 100 years at this point. Like, I feel like a lot of media traction around it has pretty much just focused on, oh, this is a new phenomenon and things are really getting bad now. When really this is a thing where Israel has been stealing Palestinian land for like 80 to 100 years at this point, and people have just been turning blind eye after blind eye after blind eye because it doesn't affect them. And so who gives a shit? It's getting to a point where we're about to have no return. It's about to be, this entire group of people are going to be erased from existence. And we should be far along in history where we've seen this enough to where we would be stopping it. But we keep seeing people in power just sitting by idly as nothing gets done, while genocide after genocide after genocide after genocide just keeps happening again and again and again. And it's very heart-wrenching. And this record pretty much sits on that and makes you contemplate just the horrifying nature that I have to listen to. And towards the end, hopefully trying to inject a little bit of hope into you that maybe this could be fixed. Maybe we could stop. Maybe we could, realize that these are fucking human beings and end the genocide that is going on there. Now, I'm not very optimistic that America will pull its involvement out of it and stop supplying Israel. I don't think that'll happen, but it'd be a nice, great thing to do. And at least in the meantime, I'm glad somebody is putting very thoughtful, very well penned, very well orchestrated, and just beautifully haunting music and scoring this and hopefully bringing this to more people's attention, because despite you and everyone in your circle knowing about it, maybe not everyone knows about it, despite it getting 24/7 media coverage. And people should be contacting their congressmen any way that they can to try and get some action done. And that's pretty much what I interpret this record's mission to be. Now, on a much lighter note, number 11, Kendrick Lamar, GNX. With the Gout the Arsonist entry, I pretty much said that was my rap album of the year until this one dropped. And yeah, and it dropped fairly recently, but I can say that it's fucking incredible. On his last record, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, Kendrick wrestled with and finally let go of the savior complex that had been haunting him for album after album after album, which eventually paralyzed him after the poor reception of Damn into not releasing anything for nearly half a decade. Until he finally came back and said, I need to focus on me. and that is more important than trying to do something as futile as saving the world with my music. And with this record, he essentially does that. He essentially drops that persona and just has fun after winning what is one of the most viral and well-publicized rap beefs in recent years, maybe the decade, definitely the decade. And after his victory with that, he's just coming back with a great selection of bangers, West Coast-inspired fucking bangers. But it's not like Kendrick can just stop being Kendrick at the end of the day, because he does provide tracks in here that are some of the most well-written he's done ever, such as Reincarnated or Man at the Garden. Where Reincarnated, he's going through the lives of many different artists that he said he lived as, such as Billie Holiday or other jazz style musicians who I don't think have been fully confirmed yet. But he runs through the perspectives and flaws and errors of these artists and goes to himself and thinks that he has it all figured out. But through a conversation with God, God brings up these issues that he may not even be fully aware of, and he may not be fully conscious of, and he has to reflect on those and wonder if he's really deserving of the accolades and the position that he's in the current music industry, despite all this work that he's put into it to get here. Yeah, despite the surface level nature of this record, he really is still providing some of his best music to date, some of his best well-written ideas to date. And yeah, I'm glad that Kendrick is back with another record so soon. I wasn't expecting that. I was kind of worried he was going to go into hibernation again, but glad he's back. Hopefully he continues to take time with his music and comes back with something even more incredible. All right, top 10 time. I'm going to try rushing through this because I do have to go to work in about 10 to 15 minutes. So sorry if these descriptions are not as full as you would like. But yeah, number 10. Brittany Howard, What Now? I don't listen to that much soul music. I'm a little worried that I'm kind of too much of an outsider and that I would be listening to the most basic surface level stuff, but I had to give this one a listen because the cover art is so beautiful, and then I listened to it and oh my god, the music is so psychedelic, beautiful, transcendent, and its choruses are so fucking engaging. On the back half of this record, she even fuses in elements of like house music, fucking electronic music, and it really just stacks up to be one of the most beautiful and moving and fun records of the year. An album that really surprised me, honestly, because I expected to get a couple cool little moments out of it. But wow. Wow. Number 9, Porter Robinson with Smile. People's first reaction to this one was fairly mixed because they were expecting a lot more of the electropop and subtle, like, progressive house that they got on Nurture, but this one is a lot more poppier, a lot more in your face, a lot more indie-tronic, and honestly, I think it's pretty fucking great for that. You have moments on here like Cheerleader, which are straight up like MySpace era pop songs, and they're some of the best songs in the year. You have Russian Roulette, track 3 on here, which is legitimately one of the most heart-wrenching ballads of anti-suicide ever. You have Mona Lisa with Frost Children, which is one of the most smile-inducing songs on the record. And this thing is really tight and trim at 40 minutes, 10 tracks. It really just hones in on its ideas, on its little handful of ideas, and makes sure to pad them out to be as great and captivating as they are with some of the stickiest choruses and cleanest production of the year. You're not going to hear a whole lot of blemishes on this. It's really fucking masterfully made. Number 8, what is really a lot of people's pop record of the year, Charli XCX, Brat. I finally got into Charli's music this year. Not that other years I hadn't liked her stuff. I just haven't actually listened to a lot of it. But with this one, it really converted me from a Charli skeptic because I was a pretty surface level bitch and only knew Boom Clap and fucking I'm so fancy. Aside from her self-titled Charli record, this really is her best project at demonstrating what she's about, who she is, showing the love that she has for her collaborators and all the people that have taken her to this point that she is now. Because this thing is not only just a damn good electropop dance record, it really is such a celebration of these styles of music and a celebration of the key figures who brought her to this place. A.G. Cook, Sophie, and even the more casual moments on the back end like Apple or Mean Girls, which is apparently supposed to be a satire of mean girl culture, which I saw get a little bit of pushback, but I mean, it's still one of the better written songs on here, and it still has one of the strongest electro bass things on there. Yeah, even these more subtle tracks that are not focused on a single topic are still fucking incredible. The bangers on here go hard. The more introspective, soft moments on here, like I think about it all the time, are fucking heart-wrenching and incredible. Literally, the outro of Everything Is Romantic has made me cry so many fucking times. It is so overwhelmingly beautiful. I think Stoffelstein produced that bit, and you can tell, because oh my god, it is absolutely heartbreaking. Number 7, Magdalena Bay, Imaginal Disc. This is also a pretty damn good pop record. record. I think technically my pop record of the year. But honestly, calling this a pop record overlooks the fact that it's more progressive rock and more electronic and more psychedelic than anything. Because honestly, thinking of this as just a pop record overlooks all the little nuances and subtleties that it has, because this is very much a concept record and very much a story LP, and has one of the most fluidly flowing track lists in all of the year. In my opinion, the stretch from Image to Tunnel Vision is some of the best music you're going to hear all year. And I guess if you're going to classify it as pop, I guess it is some of the best pop music you're going to hear all year. This record is so beautiful, and if you don't listen to it, I'm going to hunt you down. Number 6, Parannoul, Sky 100. You might remember last year, Parannoul scored pretty high on my year-end list. And here he is again. This record is a lot more ambitious, even having a 14-minute track in the middle of it. And tracks like Gold River, so beautiful that I kept almost crying every time they would come on. The compositions here and the playing is absolutely brilliant. The only thing bringing this down from being a perfect record is the fucking production, which obviously is listenable, it being up this high, but like, it's so noisy and so distorted and so rough around the edges that if I'm not in the right mood for it, and if I don't turn my volume down a little, I will get a fucking headache. Because yeah, if this was as cleanly produced as After the Magic, it legitimately would be best album of the year, if not best album of the decade, because the compositions and the writing on here is so fucking good and stands so well on their own that I can even look past the kind of piss poor production to just acknowledge just how excellent these songs are. All right, top 5. Number 5, Chelsea Wolfe, She Reaches Out to She Reaches Out to She. This thing dropped in February, and I thought it was pretty damn incredible. I thought it was pretty good, and then the big giant finish of Dusk really made the record click for me. But with subsequent listens, I didn't really get as much, and then it clicked for me again near the back end of this year. Because for some reason, the hazy sonic textures and the borderline ambience of tracks like Everything Turns Blue and Tunnel Lights and All You Ever Wanted Was the Liminal didn't exactly resonate with me during the sunnier moments of the year, but during these darker, more despondent moments towards the back end of the year, I've really found myself coming back a lot to this record and just its utter beauty and its utter reflection on just loss, love, heartbreak, feeling out of place in the world, and the sonic textures, incredible. Definitely fucking incredible. It's a record that pretty much defies words. Number 4, Jordy Griep, The New Sound. I'm a pretty fucking big Black Midi fan. I got into them pretty late, and then the band broke up earlier this year, and then Griep announced this album, and then it dropped, and then it was an hour long of some very conceptual, character-based writing of this very depraved dude. This real sex-addicted egomaniac. It's such a weird concept for a record, but because of how well done it is, and how fucking enthralling these songs are, the hour that it runs doesn't even feel like an hour, honestly. Even The Magician on the back end, which is 12.5 minutes, feels like it breezes by. This feels like the natural conclusion to Black Midi, or where Black Midi would go next with it stretching out these songs to even longer lengths and delving more into whatever little subtle nuanced ideas that they may have. Because Hellfire and Schlagenheim may have been great little bits of microaggression and little shots of ideas and rough around the edges ideas and production choices. But like, this one feels a lot more meditative and contemplative and a lot more progressive. This record will build on ideas as far as it can until these ideas are perfect. Number 3, Vampire Weekend, Only God Was Above Us. This album is so good that it feels like these songs have been around forever. They feel well tread, they feel very classical, if I can say that. And the sonic texture on here of the, I know I keep bringing up sonic texture with albums, but I'm very much an audiophile, very much a nerd about that sort of production style and choices like that. But the sonic textures on here, with having these mixed fidelity mayhem of such as like the drums having this one sort of feels like it's one sort of recording quality, and then the violin on classical comes in and it feels like it's being recorded in a different room, a completely different acoustic setup. It really has such a unique texture and vibe to the record. It really helps fuel this album's themes of warfare and class divide and police corruption, because this does feel like the type of sonic palette you would have if you were just a bunch of ramshackle, rough around the edge rebels dealing with some very corrupt force and having to deal with it in your own way. You would have some very cleanly, very highly produced masterpiece or something. You would have some very rough around the edge of stuff, and the very rough around the edge production that Vampire Weekend employs in this record is fucking phenomenal. It also helps that their chorus game is on point. Their verses are on point. And Ezra's vocals are so much more rustic and aged than on any other previous record. Vampire Weekend really came back with one of the best records that they've ever put out. Definitely the best. I don't know why I'm saying one of the best. The best record they've put out to date. And I am very curious to see where they'll go from here, because I honestly don't know. I don't know how much more perfect you can get, but it's not a 10 for me. It's a record that is so close to a 10, but it just needs that one little unknowable element of perfection, like a little something to get it there. Number 2 and number 1 are each 10 out of 10 perfect albums, in my opinion, that I have physical copies for each of them. Number 2, we have Knocked Loose, You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to. Knocked Loose was really the band that got me more into metal this year. I'd listened to some metal stuff prior. I had some metal albums saved that I really enjoyed. I have Toxicity on CD. I have The Downward Spiral on CD. It's kind of industrial metal, so I guess it counts. But I wasn't really that deep, and this album in particular really inspired me to dive further and just check out even more stuff that I was skeptical on, because the production on it is some of the most clean and brutal and loud. The choruses on here are so fucking sticky. The blasphemy is so fucking enthralling. The anti-Christian, anti-religion sentiment and the critiques that it gives out are so enthralling and help this album flow by even better than it already does. It's funny that these guys are pretty much the current metal mainstream mainstays, even performing on Jimmy Kimmel, because their stuff is so anti-commercial with its messaging and its sonic presentation being as loud and as violent as it is. But I think because their performances are so good, their ideas are so simple yet so honed in and perfected, that I think it really does just have a mass appeal and really is helping a lot of people who aren't that familiar with these subgenres of metal and just metal in general get into this style, because it is such well performed, well penned, well everything stuff. And like I said, the production is really what sold me on the record, because I do like their A Tear in the Fabric of Life EP. That one was great too, but its production was kind of standard of metalcore. And not that it's a bad thing, but Knocked Loose really did come into their own with their own sort of density and hard-hitting with this record. And then number 1, you know it. It's The Violet Pony, Girls Who Are Wizards. Some may opt for Monarch of Monsters, which also dropped near the end of the year. But I honestly prefer Girls Who Are Wizards, not just because it's the contrarian pick and because I liked this before that record dropped, but because really this is the record that made Violet click for me. Cracked my egg, so it literally changed my life. And it has the strongest production. It has the strongest set of tunes. Like, the amount of melodies I can hum back for you from this are, like, pretty much all of them. The first half of this record is some pretty straightforward bro step, dubstep, progressive dance. It really plays on early and mid 2010s EDM tropes that some people may not be fond of, myself included, but really refreshes them and takes them to a more artful, more thoughtful place. And then there's an ambient interlude in the middle of this that's absolutely beautiful and stunning that suddenly moves us into Creature City and the second half of the record, which is a lot more vocal based, which is a lot more complimented. I can't say the fucking word, but it's a lot more lyrical and thoughtful, and it gives us some of the catchiest refrains of the year. Look, I love the shit out of this album. I have talked at length about this record. I even made an album review this year when I was done making album reviews, just so I could talk about this album, because wow, this thing is fucking incredible. I love it. I love it to death. Violet Pony really tried to save EDM with this one. And in her own creative way, I think that she did, because more people are interested in the sounds that she is presenting because of this record. And I'm really looking forward to Love and Pony Step, which should be coming in 2025. Very much looking forward to that, because maybe that one would even top my next year in list. Hopefully not, because that'd be a little sad to have it be 2 years in a row. But yeah, that is my album of the year. My album of 2024 is Violet Pony, Girls Who Are Wizards. Thank you for coming along to this channel this year. It's been a pretty decent year for the channel. We've had a lot of growth. Anyway, like the video if you like what you're seeing. Subscribe for more in the future. And yeah, let's just see what happens in 2025. Hopefully, we're all still alive. And that's all I have to say. Bye.